بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نرحب بكم في اليوم الثاني في منتدى الخليج العربي الذي ينظمه المركز العربي للأبحاث ودراسة السياسات، لنتحدث اليوم عن موضوع يتعلق بالجانب الإعلامي لقناة الجزيرة تحديدا. تعددت الاتجاهات والرؤى حول قناة الجزيرة ونشأتها وهدفها وتأثيرها. هناك من يمتدحها ويشير إلى أنها هي قناة الديمقراطية التي لا وجود لها أو لا مثيل لها في الوطن العربي أو على المستوى الإقليمي. وهناك في المقابل من يرد بأن هذه القناة تستخدم الديمقراطية المجتزئة أو الديمقراطية المجزأة أو المختارة. هناك من يصنفها بأنها هي القناة الداعمة للإرهاب والمحرك له، وهناك في المقابل من يشير إلى أنها هي القناة التي واجهت هذا الإرهاب وكشفت عنه بتغطيتها المتميزة عن جذوره. هناك من يلقي عليها اللوم بأنها قناة الفرقة وقناة التحريض وقناة الفتنة، وهناك من يؤكد بأنها هي قناة الرأي والرأي الآخر. هناك من يتهمها بأنها القناة الموجهة من الأعلى، وهناك من يؤكد أيضا على أنها هي قناة الشعوب. ومن جهة أخرى لا يخفى على الجميع اعتقاد البعض ما أصابته قناة الجزيرة بسهامها الإعلامية المعادية لبعض من الدول التي يفترض أن تكون صديقة. ولا يخفى على البعض ولا يخفى أيضا أن أحد أبرز الأسباب حول انزعاج الكثير على مستوى القمة والقاعدة في هذه الدول مما اعتبروه بتحيز قناة الجزيرة. لكن ما هو مؤكد مهما اختلفت الرؤى ومهما اختلفت التصورات حول هذه القناة، إلا أن هناك إجماع على أن هذه القناة قناة بين قوسين غريبة على ثقافة المجتمع العربي من حيث طرحه لقضايا حساسة، من حيث مستوى الديمقراطية والآراء التي تعرض في هذه الثقافة التي من الصعب أن نتكيف معها بشكل كبير ومباشر وفي الوقت ذاته. لا أريد أن أطيل في هذا الجانب. هناك 3 أوراق علمية سوف يتحدث فيها 3 أساتذة مختصين. سوف يتم الحديث عن تأثير قناة الجزيرة.
We will be discussing the role of Al-Jazeera in the age of information technology. We have 3 papers. We started a bit late and we hope that we will finish on time. So I'll give each panelist 15 to 18 minutes, not more, to cover the theme that he's going to present on. We'll start with Dr. Haydar Badawi Sadig. I don't want to waste time by going through the bios. You can look at them in the booklet you have. We will start with Dr. Sadig, and you have 15 minutes.
أنا يعني لأنه حضرت ورقتي باللغة الإنجليزية فسأضطر لتقديمها بالإنجليزية، فأرجو أن
I prepared my paper in English, so I'll be delivering in English. If you allow me, please.
قبل أن أشرع في تقديم الورقة, I should acknowledge the important contribution that my co-author Catalina Petko had done to this paper. She really has made a huge contribution, and I'm glad that we are. Mic is not working. Is it working now? Okay. All right. Thank you, Catalina, and I'll try to keep myself to the 15 minutes as much as possible, since this is a more or less a I'll try to keep myself to the 15 minutes as much as possible. But you know, from the beginning, you would realize that this might be a big claim that Al-Jazeera is actually changing the Gulf and the world. But if you think about the fact that the public sphere in our part of the world is changing vastly because of Al-Jazeera, then you realize that there is some credibility to this claim, and we'll see how that proceeds in the paper. The paper will discuss how Al-Jazeera fueled the Arab Spring briefly. It will also touch upon something that no one actually discussed yesterday at all, and that is the link between, or the perceived link between Al-Jazeera and the Muslim Brotherhood and Qatar, and also Egypt's stance at the Arab Islamic American Summit in Riyadh. Also, we'll talk about Al-Jazeera at the heart of the Gulf crisis, which is the main topic. Then I will briefly also discuss Al-Jazeera's footprints in the region and internationally. New technologies, needless to say, have made it possible for people in the region to interact and involve themselves in public issues like never happened in the past. So this decentralized means other than just a blockade. We all know that it was planned, or at least discussed, that it could be bombed. So in this sense, Al-Jazeera is a force that's changing the climate, the public sphere. It, of course, serves in that sense as a trigger of political transformation in the Arab world. I don't know if I need to go in detail about the Arab Spring. All of you know how Al-Jazeera contributed to the Arab Spring, so I will skip that, and but it was important to be here as linking my points together. I will jump to this point, which was not discussed, which is I believe is a bombshell in any way. I'll try myself now to diffuse it somewhat, but it is a bombshell in the sense that, well, Aljazeera is giving more voice, at least that's what's perceived, more voice to the Muslim Brotherhood than most, if if it's not the only channel that's giving voice, real voice to the Muslim Brotherhood. And I think that's the major issue that links the political realities of this region to the to media impact. It's true that, especially after the Arab Spring, Muslim brothers have had more voice in Al-Jazeera, but it is also true that Qatar perceived the group as a suppressed organization. So, as such, it had to work in its claim that, especially Al-Jazeera, that it gives voice for the voiceless, and that since the group claims to be democratic, since the group advocates political participation and electoral legitimacy, then why not give it a platform that is denied in other places? But of course, this one could ask here that, well, if you gave it such a space, why and favorably, why didn't you, in my case, to be a bit critical of this view, one would say Al-Jazeera, for instance, didn't cover negative news in the Sudan, in Darfur, and there we know that the Muslim Brotherhood has been in power for 28, almost 29 years. So this paradox creates this question that the Muslim Brotherhood is at the center of the problem. In my judgment, if the Muslim Brotherhood was not as present in Al-Jazeera as it is and it has been, maybe we would not have had a crisis. So the crisis is political in nature. It is, of course, it then came to a point where Al-Jazeera became the issue, but Al-Jazeera is just a medium that carries that represents or that reflects the political situation in the Arab world, and the Muslim Brotherhood is central to this because they are the most well endowed, they're the most organized, and therefore we have this issue that needs to be really discussed openly and objectively. Now we come to the issue of how Egypt saw and how Egypt contributed to this dilemma. Many people think of Saudi Arabia as the main drive for this, and it is true that it is leading this effort. But in my judgment, Egypt had a great deal in initiating the process. this claim may or may not be true, but I think history will tell us that this could be true. And this was very clear in Sisi's address. If you analyze Sisi's address in the Arab Islamic Summit in Riyadh, you realize that he was clearly pointing to Qatar when he was talking about the importance of fighting terrorism, and he clearly meant Qatar without mentioning it by name. So Aljazeera is, in that sense, is in the heart of the crisis. It's challenging the way Saudi Arabia and the UAE are rearranging the regional security issues. It is working in at least it is perceived to be contributing to the rise of Islamists, which is posing a threat to their status quo, to these two countries. And Qatar, of course, is fast leading, is fast growing in having a leading role in the region and in the world. Waddah Khanfar said this about Al-Jazeera. Waddah Khanfar was a manager of Al-Jazeera. Before the current manager. He said some people call it the Al-Jazeera's spirit. Courage, rethinking, authority, giving a voice to the voiceless. And he said we have never been favored by the authority, which is true. The human being is the center of our editorial policy. We are not a TV station that rushes after stars. Very true. Big names, press conferences, and handshake. Journalism is not what they do, of course. And I believe that this statement is accurate. However, it's also accurate that Al-Jazeera never, claimed being fully objective, meaning that it sides with the voiceless, and siding with any party is, of course, that's their way of thinking of fairness. That's their way of thinking of siding with the truth. And I believe that this is changing global communication ethics in a positive way. Well, the practice may not be perfect all the time, as I said about the case in the Sudan, but having interpretive sufficiency of the events and contextualizing them and giving voice for the voiceless is certainly important for a new type of journalism. And I think Al Jazeera is definitely providing this type of new kind of journalism. I say that Al Jazeera is in the heart of this, and that it is actually the heart of the whole matter. because of its power, because of its ability to change the region, because of its ability to tell the world a lot more about Qatar and the world and the Arab world than any other medium of its kind. And that's why its closure has been the most important demand of the 13 demands. I think it's true to say this, and maybe I should just have put this up and sat down after putting it up, and that would have been the presentation. But I had to fill out my 15 minutes, and I still have 2 minutes, I believe. So I'll try to finish, to use them, to use my 2 minutes. It goes without saying that Aljazeera is becoming a major force in news around the world. And the reason why it is such a powerful medium, it is because that it has linked its fate with 300 million people. Every day I see people critical of Aljazeera, but who are watching Aljazeera and only Aljazeera. I myself, I can be critical sometimes, as you have seen from what I just presented. But I think it is the most credible news source that I would depend on, not only for news about the region, but also news about the world, except for maybe a few exceptions in case I wanted some particular types of local news or national news that I can get from other.
Last word.
Okay. All right. This shows. Could this be the last word, maybe? Well, can I? Just,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Last one, please.
Yeah, you can. I don't know if I need to go over them, but Aljazeera became a symbol of Qatar's national independence, and it is true that now Aljazeera's sovereignty depends on either keeping Qatar's sovereignty depends on keeping Aljazeera open or shutting it down. So these are now linked together. Beyond that, the demand to shut down the channel has reaffirmed Aljazeera's status as the voice of the voiceless. It is true, a voice of the voiceless.
Okay.
And I guess that's
okay.
That's
Thank you.
suffices.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your presentation, Dr. Haydar. Next will be Hugh Miles, and he will talk about a paper في قلب العاصفة كيف غيرت قناة الجزيرة الخليج والعالم. You have 15 minutes, Dr. Mayo. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much to the Arab Center for inviting me here to Doha. Al-Jazeera in the 90s and noughties created an information revolution in the Arab world. It gave Arabs a rights-based mentality and an internationalist outlook. Once they had become politically literate, it was only a question of time before they would start demanding basic freedoms and rights, just like others all over the world. This manifested itself as the Arab Spring in 2010-2011, and it led to the collapse of several long-standing Arab regimes. These events should not be viewed as isolated incidents, but more like events surrounding the French Revolution or the 30 Years' War, a long process characterized by several consecutive revolutionary waves. Currently, the revolution is in retraction, a time for organization and recruitment. But sooner or later, the next wave will come, and it is likely to be much more aggressive and radical than the last one. As we saw in 2011, one of the main factors driving change in the region is the explosion of the internet, where the revolution is already happening 24 hours a day. Since the events of 2011, there has been no let-up in the spread of new media, and today the Gulf region tops the world indexes for use of social media. These developments in new communications technology have dramatically leveled the playing field between the people and the regimes. Social media has, in my view, superseded satellite TV as the most powerful tool for networking and spreading ideas. Social media is also toxic for totalitarian regimes because it is by nature democratic and informal, with no respect for the kind of regal antics and macho military posturing that Arab regimes try and hide behind. Online, regimes are defrocked and de-iconized, a brutal, necessary psychological step before assailing the wall of fear. Crucially, as there are now many popular, credible alternatives to official government-approved media and religious establishments online, the regimes have now totally lost control of the Islamic message. This, combined with a plethora of online evidence of regime members' misbehavior, has eviscerated any claim to religious legitimacy. And the torrent of leaks keeps coming. Where once information about the internal workings of Arab regimes was scarce, now it flows in abundance, with information from WikiLeaks, the Panama Papers, even details of the UAE ambassador in Washington's email communications with prostitutes. Hundreds of thousands of pages of confidential information now in the public domain provides a detailed insight into the workings of these regimes for the first time. Determined to wrestle back control of the information flow, the regimes are using every trick in the book, just like they used to do with Al-Jazeera in the old days, from powerful lobbyists and PR firms to robots, tracking systems, reactionary laws, fines, and jail time for social media postings and political tweets. In August, after the Saudi king's top media advisor, Saud al-Qahtani, had his darknet account hacked and all his correspondence leaked, it was revealed for years he had been recruiting hackers on a darknet forum to shut down and control online accounts belonging to opposition members, spy on people using their own PCs, and to buy thousands of fake Twitter and YouTube accounts, which are used to make fake likes and dislikes, for electronic attacks, and also for trumped-up legal complaints to get moderators to take down postings. Hours before he was hacked, Saud al-Qahtani had announced the formation of a blacklist on Twitter, which he said the state would use to identify and hunt down opponents based on their online handle or IP address. The Saudi regime went on to issue some very explicit personal death threats against members of the opposition living in London, including the prominent Saudi political satirist Ghanem al-Massarir, who lives in exile. He was telephoned by Prince Abdulaziz bin Mashhur, brother of MBS's first wife, and subjected to several direct threats, including that he would come to London and cut off al-Massarir's head. Since then, the Saudi regime has continued to make more Orwellian calls, urging people to monitor each other on social media and report critics. Like Colonel Gaddafi with his Stray Dogs program, or North Korea assassinating the ruler's half-brother in Kuala Lumpur, the Saudis also run their own state-sponsored abduction program targeting dissidents and defectors in the West. These defectors have been active on social media, and sometimes one of them appeared on Al-Jazeera. I recently made a program about this for the BBC. In the last 2 years, the Saudis have abducted at least 3 royal family defectors and taken them back to the kingdom against their will. Their fate is unknown. All 3 were members of the regime before they became involved in peaceful political activities They were kidnapped and taken against their will to Saudi Arabia between September 2015 and February 2016. This is not the first time that Saudi dissidents living in the West have been targeted. In 2003, there was a similar spate of emigre dissident kidnappings, when within the space of a few months, the Saudis drugged and violently kidnapped Prince Sultan bin Turki from Switzerland. He was traumatically injected on the side of his neck as he was violently abducted by 5 masked men. Then he was aspirated and intubated before being put on a medevac plane to Saudi Arabia. He suffered serious, life-changing medical injuries as a result. Around the same time, the Saudis made attempts on 2 other well-known dissidents, both extremely active on social media and running their own satellite TV channels. Dr. Saad al-Faqih was assaulted and stabbed at his home in London before managing to fight off the attackers. Professor Mohammed al-Masari was targeted by a British policeman who had been corrupted by an official at the Saudi embassy, and he subsequently had to enter a witness protection program for his own safety. This recent history sheds some light on the purge that is happening today. Emboldened by the total lack of response or criticism from the West, the Saudis have simply pushed on with doing what they have been doing behind closed doors for several years. They are even locking people up in the same hotel. MBS is doing this as he needs the money to cover the deficit and also to enrich himself. One of the princes who was kidnapped said that MBS had told family members he wanted to be the world's first trillionaire and the richest man in history. He was not happy with the slow pace of enrichment through the usual means like defense contracts, and so he had decided to speed it up by seizing his cousin's money. The implications of this are very far-reaching. The royal family is now in a state of shock. The problem for MBS is the purge did not go deep enough. To make it a success, he should have gone the whole way, like Muhammad Ali Pasha with the Mamalik, or Hitler, or Stalin, and taken 5,000 princes into the desert and killed them. There will be revenge. King Faisal was killed by his cousin. Why? Because Faisal had ordered that man's brother to die. The royal family is all intermarried, so they have all been affected. An explosive reaction is now to be expected at any time. The public reaction is more mixed. They're happy to see notorious princes being treated like criminals, but at the same time they don't believe it is a clean purge. The image of the royal family has been hit very hard. Saudi media has built up the royal family as a special group with the king on top. Now it is being purged, it has severely damaged this narrative, which in turn makes it more likely that the wall of fear will collapse and there will be a popular uprising. There has also been huge damage to foreign investment environment and capital flight. Despite all these flagrant breaches of human rights and the rule of law, Arab regimes like the Saudis and the Egyptians remain a close ally of Western governments, and they continue to receive vital economic and political support. Rather than hold them accountable, the West's love-in with the Saudis and the Egyptians continues to break new ground. The US government is currently fighting to stop an international inquiry into Yemen, atrocities in Yemen demanded by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and backed by China. The UK government, which has sold nearly £4 billion worth of arms to Saudi Arabia since the conflict with Yemen began, has just signed a new military and security cooperation deal with Saudi Arabia, and it continues to suppress a Home Office report about Gulf governments promoting Islamist extremism. As Angela Merkel said, no one defends the Saudis without being bribed. Despite high-sounding proclamations about human rights, other Western governments are little better. Italy's arms exports to Saudi Arabia doubled this year. Canada just got caught out selling the kingdom armoured vehicles which have been used to carry out human rights abuses in the eastern province. The French and Swiss governments are still covering up the roles they played in the kidnapping of the Saudi princes who sought protection in their countries. Nor has any Western government seen fit to criticize the Saudis for the kidnappings of US and European nationals who were members of Prince Sultan bin Turki's entourage and were abducted with him on the same flight on February the 1st, 2016. Collaborating with dictators who do our bidding over Israel and pay us with petrodollars may seem like the cheap and easy option for the West. It has been policy for a long time, and it has certainly worked out well for many Western firms and governments. The impending Aramco float is set to be a bonanza for investment bankers in London and New York. But it is not looking like such a good bargain for the rest of us anymore. There are several reasons why. Above all, preventing other human beings from enjoying basic freedoms runs against core Western principles, which is corrupting and destroys faith in democracy. It has led to a rise of anti-Islamic populism in the West and the development of a two-tier system in which Arabs and Muslims are second-class citizens. Secondly, depending on dictators puts us all in danger as it makes the jihad phenomenon much worse. This is because the security services, clerics, and media of the Saudi and Egyptian regimes in particular caused this problem in the first place, and so they just pour petrol on the flames. This is why, despite the West deploying astronomical quantities of resources since Al-Qaeda first reared its head in 1998, jihadi groups have expanded on every metric since. Europe is now experiencing mounting waves of attacks. The bomb at Parsons Green tube station on the 15th of September was the fifth in the UK this year, and at least 7 other significant plots are known to have been foiled, making it the most sustained period of terror activity in England since the IRA bombing campaign of the 1970s. Clearly, the West's colossal attempts to combat the problem of jihad have been worse than useless. The only long-term solution is a complete change of strategy. If these Arab countries, like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, both had more normal and democratically inclined political environments and normal levels of freedom, including freedom of speech, there would be no room for organizations like Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, and they would simply disappear. But before this can happen, the people in those countries need to be free to choose their own leaders, just like in any other democratic country in the world. Al-Jazeera has already played a key role in making this happen, and I hope and expect it will continue to do so for many years to come. Thank you.